We are all waiting for the transfer portal to slow down. Well, let's keep waiting because it might be slowing down a little bit, but not too much. We still got plenty to talk about here at the Voice of College Football with our show On the Move, recruiting and transfer portal update. Here we are, January 2nd. Happy New Year, everyone. Appreciate you stopping by at the Voice of College Football. Right next to me, the one that's got all the info, Leanne Herring. Leanne, how you doing today?
Doing good. Like you said, Mark, when it just seems like it's going to slow down amidst playoffs, amidst bowl games, it's really when it picks up, and it's only going to pick up even more. Like we talked about, a lot of people, a lot of high-profile players on campus. Also, visits are being set because the dead period has officially been lifted. So we have some high-profile people we're going to talk about, some names that we've been mentioning already on campus as we speak. Some of these universities fresh off bowl games. Obviously, we saw a couple entry portals this morning. So there's a lot, like I said, as these bowl games, as these playoff games start to conclude, we'll see. We're going to definitely see a pickup in the action because, of course, these athletes will have 5 days from whenever their team finishes, if they are still playing in the postseason, to be able to declare. And remember, as long as they get in that. We may not see their name within those 5 days because of course, the administrative side, they have to process the paper. So usually they have up to 48 hours on the university end to be able to process. But we are already hearing a lot of kids making those declarations as their seasons come to an end, trying to test the waters. I see a lot of big programs like Texas A&M, the Tennessee Volunteers, obviously looking to hang on to some of their top guys who are looking to test the waters. But all set to talk about it, so let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. And a common theme that we've talked about is some of the elite players coming out of high school that may have to wait in line, and then they get tired of waiting in line. And one season at Alabama for wide receiver Jiren Hamilton, he sees some writing on the wall, may see some more opportunities elsewhere, so he's looking around.
Yes, he's looking around. That's really the big storyline today from a lot of the guys that we're seeing that have hit the portal within the last, 24 hours. A lot of guys similar to Hamilton, like we said, a really touted wide receiver coming out of high school. He only saw action in 2 games this season out in Tuscaloosa. So he's looking. We haven't really, I haven't had a chance to watch his film in depth, so I'm not going to give you a breakdown this morning, but I'll definitely do that tonight. So we'll have it for the next show. But again, he's another young wide receiver. Obviously, I believe he'll have 3 years of eligibility, looking to test the waters, looking to be able to find a home where he maybe can start to, increase his stock and also, look for some time and some action. So again, Jiren Hamilton, wide receiver out of Alabama, is on the move. We haven't heard anything as far because he just hit, I believe it was this morning that he officially hit the portal, even though there was rumblings the last 24 hours, but he officially is in the portal. We haven't heard of any set visits or any teams looking, but I do believe a lot of fellow SEC teams as well as possibly some ACC teams will be in the mix for him, looking to build their wide receiver room.
All right. Also staying in the SEC, you've got Noah Thomas at Texas A&M, and he is definitely making the rounds. I see a pretty good list here from you, Leanne, in regards to Noah Thomas and his interests out there.
He is one of those kids, like I said, it's interesting in the recruiting world how things come full circle. Noah Thomas was one of the first classes of 3 years ago that I was covering in recruiting. Obviously, very talented coming out of high school, has played injuries at Texas A&M, but he's been healthy. We've seen him throughout the season. I mean, when you see him, he definitely is going to. There was no surprise that he was going to be in high demand. There were rumblings with his fellow teammate, Donovan Green, also another talented tight end out of Texas A&M, also looking to test the waters. He's a name we're definitely going to be watching. There was rumblings, of course, that Noah would, be following suit. Now they are not a package deal, but of course, if you could land these two on the same backfield, it would be quite the offensive package. But again, Noah Thomas is just one of those kids that he really made the best out of his injury. It really, despite he's one of the top young wide receivers, his frame is just elite. He reminds me of former Aggie wide receiver, obviously Mike Evans. He's a he's just a towering frame, close to 6'6", very lean. And what thing's really impressive when you see Noah hit the field, it hasn't changed from high school all the way to his time when we've seen him in action down in College Station, is the incredible span that he has when he catches. Again, this is one that he's going to be watched. I don't think he will be on the board a very long time, but some of the teams to watch early on that he's already heard from, of course, Miami, Texas, Georgia. But of course, like I said at the top of the show, the Aggies are still very much looking to keep his talent in College Station. So Mike Elko and company are definitely trying to make a ploy to renegotiate because, like I said, we've already seen some talented Aggies. Like I said, I mentioned Donovan Green, another talented tight end who hasn't seen a lot of action due to injury, looking to make a move. So Mike Elko is definitely looking to salvage some of his top talented young receivers and keep them in Aggie land. But again, Noah Thomas on the move, Miami, Texas, and Georgia to be big playmakers, and I expect that Colorado could be someone. I have to mention it, if you're Lane Kiffin and you're that Ole Miss offense, he's a wide receiver that you do not, if you have the opportunity to get him in a meeting with him. I put out a tweet yesterday, and there was definitely not some Aggies that were too happy about Donovan. I said, I did my come to the sip when Donovan, retweeted Noah coming out, and there was not some happy Aggies out there saying, had some choice words about Lane Kiffin and Oxford. But all jokes aside, there are plenty of suitors for Noah Thomas. And again, like I said, exceptionally tall frame, physical. But again, one of the things that still stands out to me watching when Noah gets on the field is the fact that his catch range is phenomenal.
And credit Noah Thomas, everyone, for not opting out of the bowl game. He stuck with Texas A&M through the 13 games, played that game against USC, and productive this year with two different quarterbacks. Connor Wakeman, of course, the starter, and then he was replaced against LSU by Marcel Reed, who finished out the season for A&M. Noah Thomas, 39 catches coming off a season in 2023 with 29 catches. So he's been on the field in college football for 35 games in the SEC. So a wealth of experience from Noah Thomas. Leanne, if it's going to be a Leanne list, it's going to be an offensive line list as well. And one of those interior offensive linemen is showing up in, we've got Narado Stoker.
Yes, Narado Stoker, obviously is not looking too far. He high school, he prepped at South Oak Cliff. South Oak Cliff is one of those gems that I've been out through this past year as far as scouting high school. Stoker obviously looking to test the waters, not too far away from home. He's over at TCU. Again, haven't watched his film recently, but he's another kid that really hasn't saw a lot of action. But again, we talked about all season long the value of interior linemen, especially in this season. So I expect that a lot of teams will be calling him very soon, because another rising star that I think that you could build a lot from. I expect maybe Houston, close to home, possibly SMU. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these fellow SEC schools, Texas obviously, take a stab. Again, he's one of those building blocks that you really can help bring on. Like I said, when you see a kid out of South Oak Cliff, if you haven't had the opportunity, they just play differently, very gritty, very, very raw. So like I said, a lot of work to be done with a kid like Stoker. But again, I think he would be an asset to build depth in any interior offensive line.
Absolutely. We also have at the cornerback position, Cody Jones, who originally signed at Michigan, and he is going to apparently look elsewhere.
Yeah, he's also looking elsewhere. He's going to be he's another one that really hasn't had a chance since he's been in Ann Arbor to be able to really find his place in the footing. So again, I haven't found out exactly what visits will be set as of now, but he definitely will be a high commodity asset as far as a DB, former 4-star, like I said, but really hasn't had the chance to bring a lot to the table as far as playing time. So he's definitely going to look for a spot in a place where he can kind of upgrade and also become an asset to whatever program he watches. So I expect him, maybe to test some waters, but maybe possibly ACC school or, another small D1 school, like I said, where he can finally break out and be able to show what he can do.
Folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. Leanne and I get together on a regular basis to break down the transfer portal. And also, this is a high school football recruiting show as well. But of course, the portal has been humming and in motion since the end of the regular season. So we've wanted to focus on that first and foremost. And you'll see a lot of the information as Leanne and I are going down her list, just to kind of supplement with the 247 Sports feed and their transfer portal listings. So we will kind of pick and choose and go through it and give you as much information as possible. And again, the comments and questions are welcome. Super chats available as well. There we see coming in from 247, Pitt, a true freshman defensive lineman, Sincere Edwards, after a productive season of 6 tackles for loss and 3 sacks as a freshman, moving on to UCF. All right. Leanne, we know that Dane Key, of course, was a part of Kentucky's starting wide receiver tandem along with Berrien Brown, who decided to hit the transfer portal. Dane Key leaving for the Big Ten in Nebraska territory, and he might be taking a teammate with him.
Yep, it looks like Harley Gilmore is going to be a Nebraska Cornhusker. Of course, we talked when Dane Key and Berrien Brown hit on the market, 2 of the most sought out, offensive players. As soon as they hit the portal, there was a lot of rumblings. We thought that Georgia would definitely be able to land Key. But something to note here that I think definitely helps is when Dane Key, made the surprise kind of announcement that he was going to go to Nebraska. I think it doesn't hurt that them, and I think that's why Harley Gilmore had such a pull and a navigation towards Nebraska to join his former teammate was their wide receiver. Dacol Schwartz is heading that way that well. So I think, like I said, again, aside from all the obvious things like NIL, an opportunity to play, relationships do matter. And definitely in these circles, with the way the transfer portal moves so swiftly, it doesn't hurt when you already have a relationship with a coach that's heading that way. So it looks like Harley Gilmore, that's going to be another huge loss for a very, very struggling Kentucky offense. I mean, he was one of the few former Wildcats that really was just a spark as a young talent, in that offense that, most described as often anemic at times. He was very productive when he was in the Bluegrass. And like I said, he was one of the few bright spots that Kentucky had. And again, it's an unfortunate loss and a tough break, for the Wildcats. But it looks like he's going to be joining former teammate and former wide receivers coach out in Nebraska.
We just saw Brett Bielema and Illinois conclude a comeback season with 10 wins and a win against South Carolina in their bowl game, and took home a couple boxes or maybe a couple crates of Pop-Tarts with them. And it looks like they're picking up a wide receiver in West Virginia's Hudson Clement. Looking at his numbers, very productive for the Mountaineers, 51 catches and 5 touchdowns, but moving on to Illinois to join Brett Bielema and company there. So, Leanne, we move from our news to our rumblings section and some of the visits that are going down across the board. And we've got, of course, the 2 that we've got to keep an eye on that seem to top the list almost every day is, of course, the latest coming out from the Branch family.
Yes, the Branch family. We hear a lot obviously about Zachariah Branch, but Zion Branch and Zachariah Branch are soaking up South Florida as we speak. The Canes were able to nod a visit to the both brothers on campus, as previously talked about. The boys had visited Arizona State. Arizona State still remains very much in the hunt, and it doesn't hurt that game that they played. They played very well, unexpectedly well in yesterday. Like I said, despite what everyone might think about bowl games, playoff games, whatnot, these games still really do matter, even in the off season, because like I said, they can make a big push in the recruitment, especially with transfer portal suitors. Again, also Georgia has been in the mix for the Branch brothers, but of course, this is a recruitment that we think will be drawn out. Obviously, we talked about how both these brothers, high profiled, highly touted on both sides of the ball. Zachariah, one of the most talented wide receivers coming out of USC. Of course, Zion, on the other side of the ball defensively, very strong at his position. But so we expected more suitors to come into the mix, and we're also hearing that Tennessee and Texas is also making a late push for them. So right now, the Branch brothers are taking South Florida in with Miami. Miami is playing set to host a lot of big recruits and definitely eyeing a lot of big recruits on both sides of the bar. This would be a huge get. But again, I think that this is a recruitment that's going to be it's going to be a lot longer drawn out just because the brothers look to go as a package. And also they definitely are looking for a place that would be a fit for both of them. Like I said, we hear a lot about, Zachariah Branch more than we do Zion, but make no mistake about it. If you can land both these brothers, you definitely are landing a blue chip elite family that has the football DNA on both sides of the ball. So it should be no surprise that Texas and Tennessee are coming into the mix. Definitely Texas after that performance yesterday, down to the wire. But again, definitely stating their case. And obviously, we haven't heard if Tennessee and Texas will get a visit, but we're hearing a late push from them. And I expect that as the days go on, that there could be potentially more suited. But for right now, the Branch brothers are taking in South Florida and Miami to see how they could fit in the mix and how they could see themselves down with the Canes.
Folks, we just wrapped up our Florida State show just a few minutes ago with the Renegade Report. And one of the main guys we talked about. And if you want a deep dive on Florida State, check out the live stream we just concluded, because we ran through probably 8 or 10 players visiting Florida State, looking at Florida State. But the guy at the top of the board is one that Leanne's got listed here. And that, of course, is Tennessee wide receiver Squirrel White, who's been there at Tennessee and producing for so long that he was playing with Hendon Hooker back in 2021-22, and then Joe Milton at quarterback, and of course, Nico Iamaleava this last season. So Squirrel White, a longtime Vol, but looking to move on.
He is looking to move on. Like you said, he's been a staple in Tennessee across its many changes, especially offensively. And right now he's currently at Florida State. So we haven't heard any other schools that he's planning to make a visit. We're hearing that he wants to play close to home. Obviously, out of Clay Chalkville, elite prospect coming out of there. So we're also hearing that Tennessee, with all the loss and potential loss, obviously, of Malik Matthews could be another potential Vol headed out. They're really trying to keep him. That we're also hearing that there might be a late ploy to try to keep Squirrel White, as a constant, like you talked about. When you've had a player be able to develop, no matter how much of a production factor they've been, he's still been able to see Tennessee through the transition. So very well known with his offense, obviously the experience. So he's become an asset, not just on the field, but also in the leadership position, experience position. So right now he is visiting Florida State, but we're also hearing that Tennessee is also possibly looking to maybe try to renegotiate as well, because of course, with the potential losses that they are already seeing. And then also obviously Malik Matthews is another guy who could possibly be on the way out that we mentioned earlier. For the Bulls, that they're also trying to renegotiate. So that'll be a close one to watch. But right now, Squirrel White testing the waters after some longevity down in Rocky Top.
One of the components of the transfer portal that I see over and over there are players that may have played for losing teams or obscure programs that didn't really get much fanfare during the regular season, as people are watching, of course, the major teams and the big conferences. But then we find out that there are extremely talented players, like a guy that Leanne and I have discussed each and every time that we've gotten together on the transfer portal, and that's Tacario Davis at Arizona, a guy that was seriously considering moving on to the next level in the 2025 NFL draft. And when you look at his list of suitors and who's going after him, it is pretty darn impressive.
It is really impressive. And I thought, obviously, this is his second time in the portal. Obviously, Arizona was able to have him withdraw the first time, so they were able to keep him, renegotiate. We had heard early on when we mentioned his name that was also a possibility, because for a while, Davis kind of remained silent, didn't really talk about any potential visits. Obviously, his phone was ringing off the hook, and rightfully so. He's just productive when he hits the field. He's a ball hawk. He's just no other easier, simple way to explain it. But like we said on the previous show, that he has finally kind of decided to test the waters, and it seems right now that Washington will still get the visit. But again, some other schools that are definitely looking and hoping that they can get a visit as well as Ole Miss, obviously, Michigan, Miami, and Texas are trying to secure visits. But right now, like I said, Davis has been really quiet, kind of kept his recruitment off, to the vest. Like we said, there was a lot of talk that maybe he was going to withdraw from the portal and remain at Arizona, and that might still be a possibility. He's also taking his time to see where he's going to go. But right now, while he has a lot of people knocking on his door, a lot of high-profile suitors, like mentioned, Michigan, Texas, Ole Miss. Right now, it looks like Washington is the only place that's securing a visit. So as soon as we hear more on if he will be visiting anywhere else, but it looks like the Huskies are looking to hone in on him and capitalize quickly.
Another guy that we have talked about almost on a daily basis here, Leanne and myself, in tracking these guys, is David Gusta, the Washington State defensive lineman, as we stay in the state of Washington. But it doesn't appear as Mr. Gusta is going to stay there because he's looking at a lot of SEC schools right now.
Yes, he is. And we said that the linemen, the two high valued, probably the two high valued positions that we saw a lot of movement, and especially are positions that are really of needed necessity, are obviously the quarterback, and another are the offensive and defensive linemen. The Washington, with all that early, mishaps and transition for Washington State, a lot of players from there opted to, test the waters and try to find new homes. But out of Washington State, they have produced a lot of high value players that we've talked about, and David Woost is one of them. And right now, he's down in College Station. Mike Elko is definitely looking to make a strong play. And right after him, I'll mention another lineman that's also being hosted by the Aggies. But it appears that Worcester right now, he's going to be hitting College Station, and he'll be heading over to the Bluegrass to be meeting over there with Stoops and his crew to be looking to see how he could definitely be an asset in definitely a Kentucky defense that showed a lot of promise early on, but just couldn't find a way to close. The addition of Gusta definitely would be very much welcome to see if they can get that momentum. So he'll be hitting Kentucky next. And then, as we know, as of right now, he'll be finishing things off as far as the visits that are set down in Rocky Top and in down with Tennessee in the Bowl. So he definitely is an exciting player to watch. Another recruitment of a high value player that is also looking to take his time. And we were catching up, and he didn't spend his holiday break like most people. He wants to see. He's very serious about the career he has ahead of him. We heard that he was sitting there over the holiday break watching film of all his potential suitors, interacting with these coaches to see how he can already be a fit and a playmaker. So this is another kid not only talented on the field, but also has a very high level football IQ, that is taking his recruitment seriously. This is not just something where NIL is a factor. He really wants to go to a place and really study and get to learn wherever he's going to visit, to really see, can he see himself there? Can he not only be a playmaker, but can he be a part of the culture? Can he grow with this team? So whoever lands David Gusta is going to get a very high caliber player on and off the field that I think will not only bring a lot of experience, but a lot of leadership as well. So he will be hitting, obviously, College Station today, and then Kentucky and Tennessee will also be stops along the way.
Folks, we want to remind you that punters are people too. And they may not be football players. We could have that argument, but they are definitely valuable. And we've got one of the best in the nation, according to 247 Sports. This just came down here in the last couple hours. UNLV punter Marshall Nichols expected to transfer to Georgia Tech. He was the 6th rated punter in the country in regards to average yards per punt, has been starting punter there with the Running Rebels for the last 3 years. So that means, of course, that former Florida coach Dan Mullen is going to have to look for a punter because he's lost one of the best to Jeff Collins and Georgia Tech. We saw Leanne, Iowa State make their way to the Big 12 championship game and then get a bowl win against Miami, but they probably are going to lose one of their best defensive linemen.
They are. It looks like who's off. Like I said, Mike Elko is doing a tremendous job on the transfer portal, capitalizing despite the transitions of top players leaving. He's also hosting Iowa State defensive lineman Tyler Odom. He's in Aggie land today, so Mike Elko is definitely focused on keeping that defensive line. Like I said, games are won in the trenches, and Tyler's time at Iowa State. He was probably one of the most productive guys in the trenches, really, making a staple and one of the, key pieces for the Cyclones throughout his time there. Some of the other schools to watch, and it's obviously not too far off the road. Heading to the semifinals is those Texas Longhorns. They are very much in the mix, looking to eventually host him if he still remains on the board, along with Notre Dame and SMU. So definitely the Texas schools are looking to bank on him. But of course, Mike Elko right now focusing on two of the top defensive linemen today in College Station, in Tyler Odom and then obviously David Gusta. So that'll be an interesting pair of D linemen to see how long they remain on the board. But again, Mike Elko trying to continue to build game in the trenches, and like I say it over and over again, defense does win championships, but we've seen it time and time again. Two unsung players, two group types positions are definitely the linemen, and like you said, those special teams players. Talking about the punter also, kickers are essential. I'm sure that Texas kicker yesterday was very glad that they were sure able to make up for those two missed field goals. So again, kicker, another essential but not highly touted player often at times, but definitely kickers are in special teams positions are definitely a key component to making those wins. We've seen it in many close games this season, postseason and playoffs. What a difference a field goal can make in big games.
I got to say, one of the aspects of this show and what Leanne brings to the table that I enjoy is that I'm on top of college football as much as I possibly can be. Do I miss quite a bit? I got people on here telling me all the time that I don't miss anything, and I see it. No, that is not the case by a long shot. I miss all sorts of stuff, but I definitely miss out on high school football recruiting. I look at rankings, I look at the players, I look at the names and that sort of thing, but I do not have any strong connection to the high school football recruiting. And Leanne is locked in and connected. She has sources all over the place. And then when it comes to the transfer portal, it's the same deal where I have no idea who's visiting where. We've got a number of contacts here at the Voice of College Football. And of course, our stringers that we bring in to talk about their particular teams. But Leanne, I don't know how you do it in terms of keeping track of all these visits, watching the tape, having a breakdown on these players. I know that just about every time we talk, you might drop about 15 players that you've been in contact with, their coaches at the high school level, their coaches sometimes at the college level, and it's pretty remarkable. And the other aspect of this that I have no connection to, because I just don't have time for as much as I appreciate the FCS level, is that I have no idea what's going on there. But we've got one of the top backs at the FCS level in South Dakota, running back Angel Johnson, and he must be pretty good because he's got a slew of Power 5 teams looking at him.
Yes, this was a name that when I saw pop out, I haven't watched his film. But, like I said, when you make it in the riser ranks, especially, having some history covering the NFL for a while, a lot of the times you see, the guys that have the longevity, who have the best careers, didn't come from all the schools that we hear all the time, the Alabamas, the Ole Misses, the LSUs. They come from places like South Dakota. We see some of the high-profile players, especially at the back. I got to mention him one more time, even though he's going to Mississippi State, South Alabama, Fluff Bogla. Like I said, there's a lot of talent and this opportunity, and that's what you got to love about the transfer portal, that sometimes as many high-profile players that we see a lot of opportunity for guys like Angel Johnson to draw so much attention. People, much like the high school circuit, when you're in the high school circuit, especially here in Texas, it doesn't surprise people when you talk about Keelan Russell and DJ Lagway's success. Keelan Russell looking to bring back Alabama, extremely touted kid out of Duncanville. Same with DJ Lagway. It always surprises me, when you hear about kids that you covered for a long time, especially a kid like DJ, hoping we get him to Ole Miss. It didn't work out, but he's definitely in a great home and doing great things for Florida. How outside the circle of people, they're just profounded by this talent that he has. And it's almost as similar when you talk about names like a running back like Angel Johnson. Like I said, as soon as he hits the portal, he's got a lot of interest. Washington State, Tennessee, Louisville, Auburn are just some of the names we're hearing that Auburn's really going to make a push for him. So it's going to be really interesting. Again, I haven't had a chance to break down his film. Some of these, like I said, the transfer portal moves so quickly that sometimes I don't have the opportunity to sit and film. But he's definitely, you know how I feel about the running back position. One of the most necessities and often one of the most overlooked. And we've seen, Mark, we talked about a lot of running backs this transfer cycle who have really been a high commodity and an asset. And I expect Angel Johnson, just from the short list of suitors from his short time in the transfer portal, I don't even think he's been in here 24 hours, have already been in contact. I would expect maybe Colorado to be in the mix. And I see a lot of potential other schools. As I think with some of these other playoff teams, if guys like Angel Johnson, who bring in valuable talent at a different level. I always say if these guys, because like I said, I don't like you, I don't get to watch a lot of South Dakota games, obviously, but a lot of the things that I notice what make these guys so invaluable is the development programs they come from. You know, they have just a different type of work ethic. They don't necessarily have all the luxuries that you would at big Power 4 programs. And I think too, that's what gives a lot of these guys from the edge, and so it's really interesting to see how quickly that they become a hot commodity. So again, we'll definitely have more on Angel Johnson. I'll take a look at his film in between Gator Bowl and stuff this week, but I think he's going to be another exciting value running back to watch, especially. And I expect some other suitors. I expect some of these playoff teams that we see coming. Remember, as soon as playoffs are done, they'll be hitting the transfer portal. They'll be looking to try to up their rosters. Texas definitely is looking to to make some moves. All these teams will definitely look to build some moves. I believe you can never have too much depth at certain positions, and running back definitely. We've seen how much the run game can make a difference in big games, especially in these postseason playoff and bowl games.
You see on the screen, everyone, that Isaiah Thomas barely stepped on the field for Miami, but after 1 year, he is looking to move on, and he has just entered the transfer portal. And we've got our Miami channel. We've got our Hurricane show that we do each and every Wednesday with Cam Underwood from State of the U, and you can imagine that we will be all over that. All right, when I ran down, Leanne, everything that you've got to keep track of, which I only hit about 1%, but try to give people some appreciation for everything you got to keep track of. The one thing I didn't think of, and now I'm seeing here with this next player, is all the rules involved in the recruiting game, whether that's high school football recruiting, and now with the transfer portal. And it seems about every 2 or 3 weeks, we hear about a different change to the transfer portal in regards to dead periods and start dates, and how various rules have changed and been adapted. And that's another aspect of this that you've got to keep track of. And one of these rules applies to former Florida State wide receiver Malik Benson, who is looking to move on.
He is. Coming out, he's one of those that is able to use that new JUCO rule, and they're able to exhaust it. Obviously, he was formerly the number 1 JUCO player coming out of Hutchinson Community College. He exhausted his eligibility there. Now, it looked like Mike Elko was trying to make a play, but from what we're hearing, he's officially called off his trip to College Station, but it looks like it's going to be the Vols and the Ducks looking to battle, and they still remain in the hunt and have still secured visits. So another interesting one, like I said, Malik Benson looking to make one final run. Like I said, one of the top players coming out of JUCO, the number 1 JUCO player during his recruiting cycle, looking to make the system work for him. So much we talk about the flawed system of players, kind of being snubbed, programs being snubbed because of all these rules and these regulations. But like I said, as the portal changes, as we evolve with this game, and as it expands, these are perfect examples of where the system can work for a former top JUCO player who's, like I said, been able to rise up the ranks and really has been loyal to the programs that he's been to have one more shot. So it'll be really interesting to see where wide receiver Malik Benson will finish out his career. But I would say he's either going to be an Oregon Duck or a Tennessee Bowl, and either one of those teams, especially the Vols, are really in need and really have a good marketing standpoint as far as being able to continue to build that wideout room. Like I said, they definitely are in the market for some top wide receivers. And obviously, like I said, that with the Bulls in that kind of gray area right now, looking to see who they can keep, they definitely could use a player like Malik Benson to help not just bring experience, but also to bring, production and help continue to build that wide receiver room that the Bulls are so in desperate need of, able to continue that depth. That way they can open up things, heading into the offseason and hopefully preparing for the next season. We do still have another window, obviously, of transfer portal in the spring, but we talk about it so much. Most of these programs will test the waters in the spring, but to be quite honest, the bulk of your of where you're going to go and where you're going to invest in is going to bring this winter portal. And like I said, there's still a lot to be going on, especially, and after the national championship, no matter which way that goal goes, expect both teams to have guys in the portal. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting next couple weeks. But again, I think that the portal is really where we'll see a lot of the bulk of these teams that are looking to continue to, bring depth to their squad, obviously, make necessary changes where they have voids. And a lot of these last minute games are also, we'll talk about it when I talk about Ole Miss. A lot of these games, bowl games, playoff games, are also an opportunity to evaluate your roster. So you can bet that a lot of these games, these coaches are not going to only look, obviously to win and close their seasons at their bowl games or try to make it to the, the last round towards the national championship. But again, this is an opportunity for these coaches to really evaluate their roster in a game time setting, and be able to see where their needs and focuses are going to be as we are in the midway through the portal.
Isaiah Neyor is one of the rare players who's looking to play for a fourth team in college football, but that rarity is not going to be one very soon because there's going to be a ton of guys in that category. He originally signed at Wyoming and was an all-conference wide receiver with the Cowboys in the Mountain West, moved on to Texas, and basically much was expected of him, barely stepped onto the field, moved on to Nebraska, where he's been fairly productive there with the Cornhuskers. Jeff Brom, of course, the head coach at Louisville, is known for developing quarterbacks. And one of the benefits there is that if you play wide receiver, it's going to help your career as well. And we see Isaiah Neyor expected to sign with Louisville, according to 247 Sports. Leanne, another wide receiver that you're keeping your eye on is Donovan Murphy.
Yes, Donovan Murphy. Now, he's one of our high school guys. Of course, he's one of the many top players that are participating out in Florida today. They will be participating at the Under Armour All-American Games. Donovan Murphy, one of the most coveted blue chip wide receivers, has yet to make his commitment. But today, before kickoff with his final, obviously his final game of his high school career, he will be choosing between 5. Obviously, we're hearing that from his top 5, it looks like South Carolina has a big push in Colorado. But again, you just never know. Ole Miss will also be in the mix. And then, of course, Clemson as well. So it'll be really interesting to see where he goes. But that will be one to watch. And we will definitely bring you the coverage of one of the nation's top wide receivers to make his college commitment at the Under All-American pregame today before it kicks off.
Lane Kiffin, of course, has his mind on Duke right now, but we are just a few hours away from the Gator Bowl, and the Rebels finishing up what they hope will be a 10-win season, and then it's full throttle on the transfer portal, including a couple guys that Ole Miss is hot on the trail of.
Like we mentioned earlier, Ole Miss is looking to hopefully secure highly coveted Arizona corner, Tacario Davis. We haven't confirmed yet if they will be able to do that, but 2 guys we do know that will be on campus January 6th after the Rebels do return from Jacksonville, hopefully with a win against Duke, closing out and doing their 10-win season. They will be hosting one of the guys that we haven't really talked a lot about, but he's definitely been one of the more highly coveted linemen coming out of San Marcos, Texas. Texas State lineman Ben Bell. He's set to come to the SIP January 6th. This again would be another top lineman that Lane Kiffin is looking to secure. This is one of the big things I've talked about all season that I felt was a missed opportunity, where we saw the Rebels really struggle as far as being able to be consistent, was on their line, as touted as a defensive line and obviously offensive line that had struggles. The addition of, I think, will be a necessity for Lane Kiffin. So I believe that Ben Bell would be a huge asset and a much needed addition for the Rebels. So he's set to visit campus on January 6th. Also, we talked a lot. We know the history between Lane Kiffin and the Tennessee Volunteers, but they're looking to hopefully also snag up another top defensive guy and defensive back, Christian Harris, another young guy who hasn't really made his footing down with the Vols, but looking for a new home. They're set to visit him on January 6th. I assume that we're going to be getting, as the bowl game wraps up, and some of these guys, like we said, hit transfer portal. I expect more visits to be set, but right now we know that these are two big visits that the Rebels are anticipating after they pack up and close the season out in Jacksonville and return home, and look to use this game as a means to evaluate their roster and really see where they can really pick up the pace and use this transfer portal to their advantage.
Well, Leanne, unless you've got any other players that you think we should hit on, that kind of sets us up as a transition into tonight's Gator Bowl in Jacksonville with Duke and Ole Miss both at 9-3.
Yeah, this is, like I said, nice transition. I'll shake things a little bit off. Like I said, for me, there's not a lot of things that the Rebels, need to, I hate to say need to do. I think for me, this is an evaluation of your roster game. I think that the Rebels are looking to close a series. You hear me say it time and time again, it's time to stand on business, but for the Rebels, it's time to finish business. For the guys that we're seeing on their way out heading to the NFL, this is a great opportunity. I know we talked a lot about, a lot of players that have opted in to remain with the Rebels. This is a great opportunity for them to not only close out, strong with winning this game, with a strong performance and a strong showing, 10 win season, but also to get one opportunity to provide NFL scouts with film. And I can't say that enough. I think we all know what, players like Jackson Dart, and Walter Nolan and some of these other players, we know how elite they can be, but it's always good, I think, to be able to see, film on these players constantly without a big gap. So I believe that this is going to be a big evaluation game. Also, obviously, we know that Jackson Dart's going to be in this game, and he's, there was a lot of question in some of the early media talks this week is, the Cam Ward question, and he respectfully said that he wasn't going to answer that question, but his intention is to play four full quarters for the Rebels to close out, a very strong career, with the Rebels. But again, in this game, I definitely think it's about standing on business and the evaluation of the roster. And I do believe we've seen it. We've seen it time and time again. The Rebels, I don't care how far ahead they get, I do believe that they have to keep the gas going as much as they can in this one. Simply put, we've seen it, how close to some of these teams that we don't expect. Nobody expects Duke in here to come in here and to give the Rebels a run, but we've all seen how that storyline plays every single time, not necessarily in the Rebels. So, and Duke is one of those teams, if you looked up some of their stats, they're a comeback team. Now, they are good at coming back when put in a situation, and some of their wins where they've come back, they've been down. So again, the Rebels are really going to have to take this game seriously, put out all the stops. But I think for the Rebels, it's an evaluation of the roster. As much as I want to see Jackson Dart close out his career, I think that when we get in a comfortable spot, it would really be good to see Austin Simmons come in there. And I say this going back into the importance of the O-line. I'm really interested to see, Austin Simmons. Most of you that are Rebels know he's a left-handed quarterback, which is always very unique, I think, when you bring in any player at any position in any sport that's a lefty. I think that they just bring a different dynamic. And transitioning back, I think that this is going to be an interesting see where we go with the right tackle. I think that, we've talked about Pounds and Williams. Are they going to switch them? So I think if when Austin Simmons does come in this game, and I do feel like he is going to be in this game and taking reps, it'll be a good time to evaluate where we're going to go with the right tackle and that position, because I think that's going to be really key going into the offseason, how we're going to be able to provide, for Austin Simmons and protecting him. And I think that will be an interesting match. Also, obviously, the running back room has been much of a talk through the town throughout the season. Obviously, we're hearing that Logan Diggs will be available for this game. So that's going to be really interesting to see. I don't think we've had an opportunity, obviously, to see really the full scale, and I think that this will be a good stage to be able to see and evaluate, obviously, the running back room. I know there has been talk, obviously, that we're still looking for another running back, and I still think that's very much the case. So don't be surprised if we go after Angel Johnson, or one of those type running backs. So honestly, overall, that's really kind of where I see it, Mark. It's just an opportunity for the young guys. I think I'm excited to see. You've heard me mention him a lot, and this time last year, I was looking at him play his last game as a high school All-American, Will Eccles. He's the kid that I've watched from jump, hometown kid coming out of Houston, Mississippi, was very, very under the radar, really didn't get discovered until about 2 years into his high school career, going to that national combine. Last year, he was our only All-American representing him. So now we're going to definitely get to see him on the defensive line. He's had a couple times this season, but I think it'll be really good to see him also evaluate former 5-star Cam Franklin. So I think today it's going to be good to kind of see where we're heading and where we're going. And I think that this will be the focus of the game. But I think for me, it's me is this allow the young guys to get their reps. I think when we get in a comfortable position, that it should be the time where we evaluate what we have, what we need to work off. That way, as soon as we wrap this game up, hopefully with the win, closing it strong, sending out our seniors, sending out our NFL guys, our future NFL guys, hopefully with some good film and of course, I'm sure if we win this game, there's going to be debate, where the playoff debate's going to come back. But you know how I feel about that. Leave the past in the rear view, look forward. And I think this game is about looking forward. I know we've had a lot of people talk about, what's the problem with Ole Miss? And I said, it's not about the culture. I think it's about how we close. We've been able to get, knock on the door several times, prior to Lane Kiffin and during Lane Kiffin with a different type of talent, a different type of roster. This is probably one of the most elite rosters. But again, I think that, that Lane Kiffin has done a great job along with his staff building for the Ole Miss to come. And I think that's what this game is about, is looking ahead and what we're going to build from here. And I think it's going to be exciting to see because there is a lot of young talent that we haven't got to see. We got to see bits and sparks of it. Like I said, Cam Franklin, Will Eccles. I mean, our defense looks really bright. And then our incoming, some of our early enrollees that we'll have in there have been practicing, obviously, with the guys. They're going to be exciting to watch. So, I think this is just going to be a fun game. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that. But really, I think it's going to be a time where we can really evaluate where we stand to get the Rebel fan base excited, because there is a lot to get excited about. I think for me, I see it a lot differently, especially working with the high school kids. I know that we don't talk a lot about the high school kids, and I feel like Ole Miss has done an excellent job from all the time since Lane has gone here with this incoming recruiting class as far as the high school realm. But I think you see things a lot differently. I'm a fan of building on young talent because, it's great to have veteran experience. Don't get me wrong. But I think that when you're trying to build for longevity, when you're trying to build for a future, I think that that's one thing Nick Saban was always excellent about, that he really didn't focus on age or, he focused on ability and talent and competition. I think that we see a lot of that. So I think that there's a lot to get excited about. Of course, we're going to be without Trey Harris, Yam Banks, some key components. Some of our transfer guys on the line obviously won't be in there. And I'm okay with that because, again, especially with the transfer guys that we just got, some of them are plagued with injury. I would rather them be healthy heading into the next year so we can actually utilize them and get a return on that investment than trying to put them in one last game to kind of see where things stand. So for me, this is a see where things stand. But again, don't take Duke lightly. Never take any team lightly. If we haven't learned anything all season, I don't care who's across the board. I used to have a 5-star kid who in high school, I mean, he was just magic to watch at the running back position. And everyone was always just amazed by his talent. But the one thing I loved about him, as young as he was always humbled. He always said, "I work like I have no stars, Miss Leanne. I work like I'm down versus being up." And I think that's such an interesting approach. And I feel like Ole Miss has to do the same in this game. We've seen it all season long. We've seen it in the last 24 hours. Teams that weren't expected to give a run have made a run. But I think, and that's the beautiful thing about postseason is that I think you play different. As exhausted and as tired as your teams are, there's just that extra spark that kind of gets you. And I feel like that's the kind of game where I think today's game is just going back to your roots and about having fun. I think so much in all the hustle and bustle, we get so caught up in the business end of the things and realizing that, there's still a lot to play for. And I think this is also an opportunity, like I say, not only winning here on the turf, a bowl game, 10-win season, finishing strong, but also this is one more time, the opportunity to entice transfers, to entice those young guys, that are 2026 see themselves playing in Ole Miss. So this is another great recruiting pitch. So I always try to look in the optimism, but don't let the gas off today, Lane Kiffin. Keep going. If you ever wanted to put up video game numbers, here's the game to do it. But again, I'm really excited in this game because I feel like it's going to be an opportunity for us to be able to see the next wave of the Ole Miss future. There's a lot of talent that we haven't had a chance to see, and that's what I'm most excited about. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity to be able to send our guys out, our seniors out. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the last dance, but again, I'm always most excited to see about looking forward, and I think there's a lot to look forward. It didn't go the way we wanted it. We weren't in the playoffs, but I always say you're right where you're supposed to be, even in the tough situations. And I think despite all the criticism Lane Kiffin gets and his staff gets, that's just the nature of the game, that he's setting himself up and this program for longevity. And I think that a lot of the balance that we have, the young talent coming in and the transfers that we have and we are going to get, because I don't believe that we're done there. There's a lot of exciting things, and don't be surprised if Ole Miss is back here again. It just takes a lot of time to build, and I think we have to remember that.
So, Leanne, while that was a phenomenal setup of the game and everything, for my purposes, 17.5, you got to give me the number. Is that which way are you leaning on that? I got to make a prediction later, and I have no idea.
Okay, so 17.5, as much as I love my Ole Miss Rebels, 17.5 is a lot of points. And I say that's, like I said, and Duke's one of those teams, if you look back in their stats, and I didn't know that, I was looking, because you always want to say something good. And I know they're down their starting quarterback. I know that they're down, that they're running back. But again, we've seen teams make miracles this whole season, especially in the last 24 hours, with a lot less to work with. 17 points is a lot for me. If you're going to take Ole Miss, I say take Ole Miss on the money line. I just think that 17 points is a lot in these type of game situations, because you also, as much as you want to win the game, I'm going for a win. I'm in this game. I don't have a betting initiative in it, but 17 points is a lot for me to take. I think Duke's going to be surprising. I think Duke's going to give them a more challenge. And I say this because if you look at some of the games that Duke has won, they are a comeback team. And I feel like that's why I say when you get too comfortable, I don't care how good you are, it leaves room for your opponent to capitalize on that. And like I said, don't underestimate whoever's on the other side of the board. So 17 points is a lot for me. I'm not saying we're not capable of it. I know that Lane Kiffin and these Rebels are capable of putting up the 17 points. But again, in this day and age, there's a lot more consideration than covering the spread, I believe. And I think, you also want to stay healthy. You don't want to get some of your injured players and so it's a game of caution. The other day when we're talking about players, I thought it was really interesting because, how Dion was talking about how he got extra insurance for his son, obviously, Travis Hunter, and that's just kind of the evolution that we're going through. That's not a topic we would talk about, 5 years ago, about insuring your players like they were professional players. But again, there's a lot of other aspects that I believe, but 17 points is a lot for me. Again, Rebels, don't get upset. I'm not saying that the Rebels are not capable of it, but how are we going to approach this game? I get you want to take it to them, but again, we don't know. There's just so many outside factors where I feel like Duke is one of those teams that going to play gritty. They want to play upset. They just got all these motivations and these chip on his shoulders that we've seen it that can always sometimes outplay an opponent, even a team like Ole Miss. We should win this one on paper. This should be an easy ride. But again, we let our guard down. We make too many small mistakes. All those things add up, and it gives Duke an opportunity. And what have we talked about all season long? We haven't lost games by big margins. What we've lost games is by missed opportunities. So that is a big thing that I hope will not plague the Ole Miss Rebels today. 17 points is a lot. Like I said, Rebels don't get upset. I think that they can cover that. But I would take, if you're going to take the Rebels, take them on the money line. But, hey, in an underdog situation, I take Duke on 17.
So you see what happened there, everyone? I pick every major college football game, but if somebody would call me, if they would have called me last night, like somebody did, and say, who should I take on this game? It's 17 points. I don't know. It's a toss-up.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I've not looked into it with all these opt-outs, but I'm going to make a pick on the game just because I pick every game. I threw Leanne on the spot. Boom. She made a call on it. So I put you on the ropes and you delivered. So much better than me, who's like, just stay away from this one. But
yeah, but I have that too. Yeah, I'm like that. It's one of those games I feel like, and I always think I have a person who I consult with on betting, and he does a lot. He does professional betting and all that kind of stuff. And every time he always told me, he goes, never bet on a team that you're emotionally attached to, or you have to. And I've learned to do that. And there's times where people have asked me, how I feel about it. I said, listen, I'm going to stay away from this game, or I would, like it. A lot of the times with the Ole Miss games, I've gone with the over/under. I haven't even checked it on this game. I feel more comfortable on the over/under versus, because I feel like some of the Rebel fans will take it personally, like I'm betting against him. But like, Mark, because you do it a lot more and a lot more frequently than I do. Betting is a lot different. The way you look at the betting is a lot different, especially when you're looking at spread and all that. It's a lot different approach to when you're breaking down a win or loss situation of the game. You don't look at it the same. That's what I try to convince people. That's why I was saying right now. I'm not saying that Lane Kiffin and his program aren't capable of covering. That's not what I'm saying. They can cover. I believe they can. The question is, will all the things add up? And do you really want to? Are you more focused on covering the game and putting those 17 points on the? So I always think that I always explain to people it's a different outlook when you're looking at breaking down a game versus betting on a game.
So, folks, if you're on X, I've got your next follow right there. So, of course, check out Leanne's work. And if you follow her on X, then you can get directed at everything that she's got working, whether that's her bets for the week, her work in recruiting, and the high school recruiting, the transfer portal, everything with Leanne. And Jackson, thank you so much for posting that in the chat as well. So you can just follow the link straight to Leanne's work on X. Well, Leanne, as always, you provided us with great insight, great analysis, great information. But what was a bonus today is you talked enough to save my voice. So thank you for that as well.
Well, I tried. As many of you guys know, when you're in this business, at the voice of college football, like you said, Mark's, he's made a staple in this business, but we got to protect that $1 million voice. That way we can come to you next week. I will hit on one more thing. Like I said, we've been focusing a lot on the transfer portal, but obviously you heard me mention earlier about the Under Armour All-American game. We didn't make it out to Florida this week because we're prepping next week to hit the road. To bring you live coverage all week long from San Antonio for the other All-American Bowl, the Navy All-American. Some of you guys might know formerly as the Army All-American, but yes, it's the other bowl that the Under Armour and the Navy are the top two All-American bowls, obviously for all the primetime players that'll be playing in their last game. But two guys we want to shout out definitely since we're talking about Ole Miss. This is the year I think we have the most All-Americans marked postseason for both bowls. Under Armour, obviously. Shout out to Keon Young out of Lakeland, Florida, and obviously Cortez Thomas, two really top defensive guys will be playing. Keon Young will playing for Team Unstoppable today, and obviously Cortez Thomas, a rising four-star out of Holmes County, another top talented SIP kid who decided to stay with the Rebels. Didn't get a lot of looks early on, but man, when he hit some of those circuits, he's just a force, extremely physical. He'll be playing for Team Icon. I had a chance to talk with him. Look for my story on Rebel Walk. This week, kind of talking about his Under Armour experience, but I kind of talked. I talked a little bit to Cortez when he arrived, along with his head coach Marcus Roger over at Holmes County, who's also Under Armour coach. A lot of people don't realize what a prestigious honor it is to be when you're an All-American, especially for these kids. They have one more opportunity to close out their high school career on a college note, but also get to develop and work with some of the most talented kids. Some of the guys, we'll be seeing out there, Tacario Moore, Donovan Murphy, Keelan Russell will be anchoring. We have over 100 of the best players in the country. So, roughly about 200 to 300 of the most top elite players in this country. And you know how many schools, how many divisions there are. So when you can make that cut to be an All-American out of all the top talent, huge deal for them. But, I talked to Cortez, and he kind of said, I asked him, what does it mean for him to be at this game, represent Ole Miss? And he said that it's always a blessing to represent where I'm from. I want to make sure I quote him right. He said, being from Mississippi, showing off the talent Mississippi holds is a pretty big deal, in my opinion. And that's really great to see over the last couple years. And I've really had to applaud the Ole Miss staff and even the Mississippi State staff. Is, a lot of times we go as college programs and recruiters and scout, and we look outside what's in front of us. But sometimes the best kept secrets, especially I think that we've seen in Mississippi over the last couple of years, are just in our backyard. So not only kudos to Lane Kiffin, but also Jeff Levy for keeping talent like Cortez Thomas and other in-state talent in things. So again, he was really excited. He said it's been a really great experience, during the last couple of days, not only to continue to develop his talent, but also to surround himself with a lot of elite players. Like I said, Cortez Thomas, 4-star kid, could have easily been a 5-star. But again, he was very late under the radar. He was not one of the typical guys that we talk about of defensively. The guys that he gets to line up with, those are the headliners we hear from 247 on 3. But he's just as good, and he's going to be another kid that I'm really excited to watch. So they'll be kicking off this afternoon. If you follow up, or I'll retweet a graphic from our thing that way you can catch. And like I said, Ole Miss is not the only one representing. There's a lot of top talent, so I'm sure you will find one of your All-Americans. But again, exciting things. So when you're pre-gaming for tonight's action, make sure to catch out the Under Armour All-American Bowl. Of course, next week we will be bringing you some top prospects from all your favorite, from the Oregon Ducks to the Ole Miss Rebels to Alabama Crimson Tide. We'll be hanging out with that talent next week when we hit San Antonio for the Navy All-American. So really excited about the next couple weeks. That's another reason why I'm not at the Gator Bowl today, because like I said, I'm focusing on recruiting and watching from afar. But again, super excited. Like I said, congratulations not only to all our 4 Ole Miss All-Americans competing in these bowls these next couple weeks, but all the guys out there. Like I said, a lot of talent out there that's excited. It's always exciting to watch. I always love seeing, like I said, some of the guys we mentioned at the top of the hour. 3 years ago, I was helping recruit and scout them and write about them. And now, they're hitting the portal and they're a little bit grown up. They make me feel much older too, but it's also always exciting. Like I said, that's why I always say that relationships do matter, and especially in recruiting. And we see it a lot in the portal, why these guys are going where they go, because they have attachments or all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's really exciting to watch. But if you need a little pregame action, 4:00 out in Florida, like I said, we'll drop a graphic here so you can get all the information. Watch one of the next rising stars out of your team and cheer them on for the Under Armour All-American Bowl.
As we've reminded everyone since last night, certainly keep the families of the victims from Bourbon Street in New Orleans in your thoughts and prayers. Of course, the game time for the Sugar Bowl has been adjusted. We will be here live after the Sugar Bowl. We will be here live with Leanne after the Gator Bowl tonight as well. Leanne, appreciate you doing things as always and keeping us up to date on the transfer portal. And we will see you soon after Ole Miss and Duke wrap it up.
Sounds good. Hotty toddy.